All right, today we're going to tackle one of the 5 pillars of Islam, Zakat. A lot of people just think of it as charity, but it's so much more than that. It's actually a powerful, divinely mandated system designed for social justice, economic balance, and yeah, even spiritual growth. So let's break down how it really works.
So, what are we really talking about here? At its heart, Zakat is a mandatory charity you pay once a year. And the key word is surplus wealth. That's the money you have left over after your own needs are covered. And it's got 2 big goals. 1, to purify your own wealth, and 2, to give a real leg up to people in society who need it most.
That's the big question, right? It sounds pretty simple on the surface, but the details really matter. Like, how do you even know if you're supposed to pay? What counts as wealth anyway? And where does all that money actually go? Well, we're about to walk through all of it, step by step. So here's the game plan. We'll start with who has to pay in the first place. Then we'll get into what assets you actually have to count. After that, the simple math behind the calculation, who can receive the money, and finally, the really important principles that make it all valid. Okay, first things first. Is Zakat even obligatory for you? Let's figure out where the starting line for this whole thing is. So, for Zakat to be on your radar, a few things have to be true. You need to be a Muslim, of sound mind, and an adult. Simple enough. If you tick those boxes, then the money part comes into play. You have to own a certain minimum amount of wealth. It's called the Nisab, for a whole lunar year. And this idea of Nisab is absolutely key. Think of it as the financial starting line. If your extra wealth stays above this line for a full year, bam, Zakat is on. If it dips below that line at any point, then you're off the hook for that year. So how is this Nisab actually measured? Well, it's pegged to the value of gold and silver. If all your wealth is in gold, the bar is about 87.5 grams. If it's all silver, it's about 612 grams. But here's the part you really need to know. If you have a mix of assets, like cash, savings, and investments, which is most of us, you use the silver standard, and that's usually a much lower threshold to meet. All right, so let's say you've ticked those personal boxes and your wealth is over the Nisab. The next logical question is, what do I actually have to count? The good news is you don't have to count every single thing you own. The system keeps it simple by focusing on 4 main types of wealth that are considered productive or surplus. We're talking gold, silver, any kind of currency, and any goods you have for business or trade. Now, when we say currency, it's not just the cash in your wallet. And this is a great example of how this ancient system stays relevant. It covers everything from your bank accounts and stocks to any money that people owe you. Heck, even savings you've put aside for a big goal, like a wedding or a down payment on a house. That counts too. And now we get to the part that can feel a little intimidating, the math. But trust me, it's actually way more straightforward than you think. Okay, but before you start adding everything up, there's a really important step. You get to subtract your immediate short-term debts. We're talking about things like a loan payment that's due right now, overdue bills, or even any Zakat you might have missed from past years. You take those off the top, so you're only paying on what you actually have in surplus. So here's the whole formula in 4 easy steps. 1, add up all your zakatable assets, your gold, silver, currency, and business goods. 2, subtract those immediate debts we just mentioned. 3, what you're left with is your net zakatable wealth. And 4, you just calculate 2.5% of that number. That's it. That's your zakat. And that's the magic number, 2.5%. Want a little shortcut? Just take your final net wealth number and divide it by 40. It's the exact same thing, and sometimes it's just easier to do in your head. It's a neat little trick. Okay, so you've done the math, you have your number. Now what? The next critical question is, where does this money actually go? The system is really specific about who is and isn't eligible, so let's check out how your contribution gets directed. Well, the Quran is actually super specific about this. It lays out 8 distinct groups of people who can receive Zakat. Of course, the poor and the needy are right at the top, but it also covers the people who administer the Zakat, helps those who are in serious debt or captivity, funds community projects, and even helps out travelers who get stranded. It's basically a comprehensive social safety net. Now, it's also really clear about who you can't give your Zakat to. You can't give it to your direct family line, so no parents, grandparents, kids, or grandkids, and not to your spouse either. The logic is you're already financially responsible for them. But other relatives, like a sibling, an aunt, or an uncle who's in need, they are absolutely eligible. All right, we're almost there. Let's talk about the final, crucial rules you have to follow when you give your Zakat to make sure the obligation is actually fulfilled correctly. There are 4 things that are non-negotiable.
First, you have to have the intention that this money is your zakat. Second, the person receiving it has to be given full ownership of it. You can't just let them borrow it. Third, you have to give it to someone who's actually eligible from those 8 categories. And fourth, it can't be a payment for a service. So for example, you can't pay your employee and just call it zakat.
And just to be thorough, there are a couple of things that are considered disliked, things you should probably avoid. For instance, giving so much money to one person that they suddenly become rich enough to have to pay zakat themselves. The goal is to lift people up, not just pass the buck. Another is sending your zakat to a faraway place when there are people in need right in your own community.
So, when you put it all together, zakat is so much more than just a donation. It's this incredible, dynamic system built to keep wealth moving through society, to prevent hoarding, and to strengthen the entire community, all while purifying the person who gives it. And that kind of leaves us with a final thing to think about. In our world of cryptocurrency, stock markets, and a super complex global economy, how does a 1,400-year-old framework for social finance not only survive but thrive? It's a question that really shows you just how deep this whole topic can go. Thanks for joining me.